Poinsettia, Chapter 27. Danny sat with her knees to her chest, her arms wrapped about her legs, as she leaned back against the mausoleum that was the final resting place for the bodies of Clementine and Caradwyn. She tried to huff hot breaths into her sleeves, her legs, and her mittens. She shivered a little and tried to sink her neck further into her coat. "I'm cold." "Shut it, brat," Lord McCarran spat. "Neither of us want to hear your pathetic whining. You're not the only one who's cold, so just zip it." He was certainly getting frustrated. They had been in the cemetery for hours, and perhaps prematurely so. If what the child said was true, and Gavin was some sort of vampire or demon, it would be fair to assume he wouldn't appear, even if he wanted to, until nightfall. He wondered how early vampires could wander, or if there were ways for the foul beast to traverse in daylight hours. He knew what the books and folk tales said, but it didn't necessarily mean any of it was true. Vampires in and of themselves were just hooey, or so he thought until now. Still, he humored the notion and waited with the child and Mr. McLaughlin in that cold place by the mausoleum, with the hope they'd be able to bring down the biggest thorn in their sides. "He may not show," Mr. McLaughlin sighed. Knowing him, he probably went away for the Christmas holiday to one of his many vacation spots. Perhaps he has gone back to India. He got no response. "We should probably only wait a little bit later. We've already been out here quite a long time. We don't want to catch our own deaths out here, especially not in this godforsaken place." "What of the brat?" Lord McCarran asked. "We can simply shoot her brains out and drop her in some ditch somewhere. Let the animals have her." "The least you could do is bury me," Danny scowled. "I think I deserve at least that much dignity." "Dignity?" Lord McCarran replied, as he glared at her. "You listen here, you little wretch. You'd be feeding a lot of hungry animals. Consider that your last charitable act in this dog-eat-dog world. It's the most use anyone would ever have for the likes of you. Why deprive them the nourishment? Why deprive them the joys of plucking out your eyes, or to feast upon your innards? You're not exactly in a position to be picky or spout demands." "Don't get too excited, Leopold," Mr. McLaughlin chuckled. He reached over and patted the other man on the back. He wanted the crazed look to be put away for the time being. It could wait just a little while longer. He checked his pocket watch for the time. Once satisfied, he clicked it closed and replaced it into his pocket, and then rested his old gaze on the child. "Don't worry, lass. I'm sure it will be nice and warm where you're sending you." "Heaven?" She grinned almost wickedly, showing her defiance against her kidnappers. "How kind. It'll be far more comfortable than the fiery blaze the two of you will end up." "Humph. Touché, lass," Mr. McLaughlin replied with a smirk. Lord McCarran, however, was not the least bit amused by her. He stormed upon her and slapped her face. It stung more than it normally would, for her cheeks were already so bitterly cold. She couldn't help but to cry out, and to rub the assaulted cheek to try and dull that stinging. "How foul!" came Gavin's voice, as if on a breeze. This startled the men, and they looked about frantically for him. The next thing he said was more embodied, and he stepped from the darkness and into the moonlight. "A grown nobleman striking a defenseless child. My, what that says about your character." Lord McCarran narrowed his eyes at him. "So you've come." "Mr. Gavin!" Danny cried out with a mix of surprise and cheer. "You came for me!" "We were hoping for that," Mr. McLaughlin added. He brought up a silver cross and held it out towards the vampire with a great air of smug and confidence. However, Gavin didn't reel back as he had hoped. He didn't even shade his eyes or hiss. In fact, Gavin simply stared at the cross with no bemusement and raised an eyebrow curiously. "Huh," he replied curtly. "Only true faith could make such a thing work, Alistair. The Lord in heaven will not deliver me to you in that way, and he shall not answer your prayers. You are already hell-bound, and the power of holy justice shall not be given to the likes of you to wield against me." "You are pretentious," Mr. McLaughlin replied, as he placed the silver crucifix back in his pocket. "You obviously know your folklore and your biblical poetry rather intimately, Gavin. I suppose it was rather foolish of me to believe in the chance that you were a vampire. You honestly seem to think that you know everything, don't you? Gavin sighed. He then motioned towards Danny. Anyhow, you have me now. I am here, just as you wished. So you can release the child. I am taking her home, and I shall deal with you two traitors later. You will deal with this now, Lord McCarran demanded. He grabbed Danny and yanked her up. She let out a cry in protest. His arm wrapped about her neck, and he held her securely close to him. His free hand pulled a gun from his pocket. He pressed the barrel firmly against the child's head, indenting even on her temple. No! Gavin shouted. He moved so quickly that it appeared as if he beckoned for Lord McCarran's hand to stay and not harm the child. It took a moment to realize that Gavin, too, now had a gun, pulled on the very greedy man. Don't even think about it, Mr. McLaughlin shouted, as he, too, pulled his gun free to aim at Gavin. It was practically full circle then, wasn't it? It's no use, Lord McIntyre. One wrong move, and I'll let Leopold blow that child away. Sure, you may be able to pelt off a shot and kill him, but I'll be able to shoot you in the meantime. Perhaps I'll walk away, or perhaps we will all die together here in this place. I can promise you that, from this close range, her head will explode like a cherry bomb inside of a frog. The hand that stayed was Gavin's. There was no real way to avoid a messy aftermath with this sort of intensity. He shifted his eyes angrily between the two men. It was you two, wasn't it? He suddenly growled. The two of you were the ones who killed Mr. Borders. Am I right? Don't act so innocent, Mr. McLaughlin laughed. You have your own fair share of blood on your hands as well. Do you not? Was it not you who killed Mr. Haggard? Was it not you who killed the O'Brien boy and his companions? Justice, Alistair, he replied. I would not have had to kill any of them, if not for their own actions. Vengeance, Gavin, the old man added. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. It's a world of business and a world where money speaks the loudest. The more you have, the more power you have. Money is the god of this world. Those who stand in the way of power and money are to be dealt with. Mr. Gavin, Danny chimed in. It's okay, Mr. Gavin. You don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be okay. I'm not afraid. This child is either insane or very stupid, Lord McCarran commented. So what do you say, Gavin? Mr. McLaughlin asked, giving little notice any more to the child's situation and eagerly going in for Gavin's guilt and compassion. Are you willing to cooperate with us? He let out a grunt. What is it that you want? Excellent, the old man purred. Throw down your weapon and get to your knees. You have always been the tallest man among us. On your feet, you look down your nose at us, as if we are but vermin. Now it will be great to look down our noses at you for a change. Gavin grit his teeth and grumbled a little. This was so low, and of course they would play with the humiliation card first. He wondered if Danny would ever be safe now. If not her, then what other child? They were his weakness, and these men were very aware of that. What further humiliations would he be forced to endure? He had his pride. Yet pride could be swallowed if it was for Danny's sake. He obediently tossed the gun aside and into the snow and made his way down to his knees on the cold and wet ground. He's doing it! Lord McCarran cried out with excitement. Terrific, Mr. McLaughlin said. Now, I've drawn up a document, Gavin. This document will state your resignation as the president of the Board of Trustees and will hand it over to me. How could I sign such a thing? Gavin replied. You have me on my knees before you because of the well-being of one child. Why would I sign over St. Raphael's to you in order for you to destroy all the children at once? Those children just may get lucky and be replaced in other hospitals or go to workhouses. However, the immediate life of that child is in your hands. Don't do it, Mr. Gavin, Danny cried out. It's not worth it. I'm going to die soon anyway. A lot of the other kids are healthy. They just don't have mommies and daddies. They can be children at St. Raphael's. Who knows what could happen to them in the workhouse? The sick children may not be able to go to other hospitals, and then they too will be in the workhouse or the street. It'll hurt a lot more if you sign. You loud-mouthed little... Leopold! Mr. McLaughlin warned. Don't pick a fight with a child. I must say, I have to admire her guts. He smirked. You have a powerful man's heart in that fragile little girl's body. Regardless, you will probably shoot me either way, Gavin stated. There is only so long you'll be able to hold me at bay, and it will not always be so easy to make me so compliant." "Of course." "And you will kill the child as well," he added, nodding his head in Danny's direction. Why not?" Mr. McLaughlin shrugged. "We'll be doing her a favor, don't you think? She's never going to get better. She's just going to wilt away and die. She'll suffer as everything breaks down and shuts down. She'll take up funds and resources. It would be better to just put her out of her misery now. Wouldn't that be the most merciful thing to do?" "You two are not gentlemen, but a pair of sick dogs," Gavin growled. "You are lower than dogs." A fake gasp escaped Mr. McLaughlin's lips. He brought a hand to his face to emphasize the fake nature of it, tickling his fingers against his mustache. "Oh my! Look at him, Leopold. He appears to be baring his fangs at me." "He truly does have fangs. Perhaps we were not so foolish as to believe the child after all. Perhaps he is a vampire, or some freak of nature." "Perhaps you should play it safe, Alistair," Lord McCarran chimed in. "Ah, yes. That would perhaps be best," he replied, pulling the hammer back on his pistol. Bang!